The slap of espresso stinging on her tongue, Sophia felt eyes not just observing, but weighing her very soul. His gaze was both a hunter's measure and a poet's curiosity, cast from shadows across the street cafe's terrace, where a dim light flickered erratically, as if timid against the overwhelming darkness. Sophia De Luca preferred this tucked corner of Roma to buttress herself against the burdensome cracks of reality, like the cobblestones baby blue sandals slapped against effusively. Her attire, meticulously chosen, bespoke simplicity, a linen dress pale as dawn light, and hair swept in a hasty braid tipped with an inherited antique pinher, grandmother's memento speckled by countless stories. Eclipsed by accolades sold more in domineering stares than tender whispers, Sophia possessed a fevered gentleness that neither the chaos of city life nor the spiraling quiet within her could quell. In the bylanes of Rome, known more affectionately as an art restorer than the daughter of the fallen prosecutor, she lived in a lilt of anonymity, her daily exchanges couched in routine pleasantries among the local artisans and students. That afternoon, she cradled a text on Caravaggio, ensconced by the off-key melody of life happening around her children's laughter ruffled by the wind, the choir of Vespa engines, aromas of pistachio and espresso threading through the air. When she glanced up, it was an itch of instinct, not intention. He sat across the street, Dario Spinelli, renowned in circles best spoken of behind closed doors, his life and art both clandestine and conversational. With the precision of one who notes minutiae to command reverence or regret, his glance at her was like a painter catching the soul's light on canvas, pivoting its entirety on nuance. An angel in a den of devils, he murmured, almost to himself, but loud enough for Sophia's periphery to shudder. The awareness of being watched peeled away the layers of her world, puzzle piecing back decisions made not for want of bravery, but necessity. Pressure encircled like smoke, faint and inevitable. News had spread like wildfire through the forums, murmuring under the city's breath, cryptid whispers of misdeeds and vanishings, tied to familial legacies now tainted by invisible strings, pulling relentlessly towards entropy. To wield knowledge was dangerous. To ignore it, even more perilous. Sophia had learned that better than most. A Vesper's breeze, chilled with the promise of an approaching evening, snaked through her sleeves. It brought shivers and sights unseen. A feeling she hadn't expressed since her father's incarceration cast him into obscurity while she bore the brunt of his actions. For Dario, the game had begun even before he had sighted the canvas of sunlit skin marked by tension just beneath the polish of sophistication. The knowing, the unseeing, the chess moves unseen on a chessboard where pieces had long been moved by unseen hands. What do you seek in shadows you shouldn't? Why are you leaving? You don't have unfinished business with me? Sophia's voice cut through the silence with an unintentional fierceness, the question erupting without her permission. The city around her seemed to pause, as if even the hustle of Rome held a nuancing breath in the fallout of her boldness. Beneath her composed demeanor and artful deception, crafted with the patience of her restorative skills, lay a tempest of fear softened with unexpected allure. Her smooth, calloused hands clutched reflexively at the tablecloth, fingers tracing the delicate pattern as thoughts rushed like distant echoes, profound yet intangible in their urgency. In this early dusk, the sky bloomed into shades of lavender, fringed with the amber of lamplight, casting Sophia in an ethereal glow that belied the chaos weaving its thread through her core. Faint whispers from surrounding tables, it seemed, scattered words filled the interim braver than most, the dove under scrutiny. It was as if her world were refracted through a lens only she could see. Pressure seeped into her limbs, a cloying weight at her shoulders, as though the olives on the table before her disguised invisible weights used by ancient judges, judgment rendered in absentia. Across the street, leaning back into his shadows, Dario Spinelli regarded her with a bemusement that danced from compelling shadow to flirtation. The remnants of his espresso mirrored the darkening sky, a trivial detail anchored against the gravity of their exchange. He tilted his hat, a gesture between taunt and gallantry. "You mistake who matters," came his velvet soft reply. Words slipped deftly into her consciousness. His presence was commanding, a foregone conclusion in every criminal dossier whispered about in back alleys and over lavish tables draped in secrecy. Dario wore mystery as a second skin, yet the cut of his tailored coat hinted at emotional armory within. Her father's shadow was a long one, encompassing her own legacy with its chill. As causes célèbres unfurled in newspapers, Italian heroes and martyrs in the thin columns of press it was her name, faint but enduring, tied now to chapters half written, her reputation an unfinished palimpsest. Yet mere existence persisted, punctuated with trembling clarity as she queried herself. Was this fear or foreplay? Her role was now defined by an unexpected dynamic with this man, and it was a script written with blood as ink. Rome became a blur beyond the edge of their interplay. The city continued its ritual dance. Vendors shouted muted tunes. Headlights flickered in soft parades across cobblestones worn weary by its citizens. A silence took hold, expansive enough that she could hear more than the noise of the world. Her own breath quickening, each inhale marking territory in this suspended chapter, written in furtive glances. His words twisted across the void, entangling them in strings of destiny not yet fulfilled. Stay your course, little artist, and create a legacy worth talking about, he mused, before the dimming light cleaved reality from dreams, leaving her with a blend of hope and doubt. Sophia's mind raced, her conviction wavering beneath the scrutiny of those assembled in shadowed seats beyond her vision. A pursuit began not of desire nor destiny, but of truth submerged within her. Her escape through Rome's storied streets that night was not an escape, but rather a pursuit, each step echoing high into the ancient architecture. Her path wasn't aimless, nor was it clear-fueled by a steadfast determination to uncover the layers of her father's past. Doors barred by memory unfurled before her keen eyes, collecting fragments of history, mosaics of paternal betrayal revealed like ugly postcards from an unfinished history. Signore Spinelli sees you often, a voice in one of the shadows remarked as she passed, an intruder or perhaps a compatriot? In the underbelly, where light barely put up a fight, plans unfurled from the obscurity, a city of secrets within the city itself, as Sophia magnified her focus on an impossible and beguiling game. Her resolve crystallized, a heart in stasis between love and reluctant enmity. Each revelation folded into the next, unlocking chests of silence as she pieced together a tapestry reversed injustice turned justice, retribution an unintended muse, spun from the silk of unrealized dreams. Sophia permitted herself a moment of stillness. Her artwork spoke truths she had yet to articulate, acts of bravery shouted in color as loud as any dissent. Spinelli's intentions circled her world unfathomably close, adding depth to her resolve, a new portrait sketched in charcoal nuance. At that moment of reflection, the night air stilled with realization. Destiny charted a new course within her canvases as her father's spectral influence began to flicker like a candle near the sea breeze. An unexpected freedom tugged at her heart, an epiphany hidden until now in velvet-wrapped trust amongst confusion. As the city drew breath, so did she, stronger, braver. Suddenly, unexpected words formed at the chimney's corner. A quiet voice, female, softly hummed, "The past is never really past." In them lay the weight of a promise unbarred, a last punch echoing into the night's solitude. Sophia inhaled sharply, the world poised at night's edge, waiting for either dawn or dusk. And as she turned, just beyond the tangle of lamplight and ivy, slipped a shadow parting ways from another, gesture uttered like a witch's knotted spell, meant only for those deciphering it. "For the living," they whispered, as she blinked into the uncertain horizon, all her questions unresolved. But the answers would unfold on waiting canvas. The cafe's sounds faded into the background, replaced by a piercing silence shattered only by the distant cry of a gullah, resonant echo that startled Sophia as she turned her gaze across the street again, feeling an odd sense of time spiraling, compressing into this moment. Her heartbeat marked the seconds with erratic regularity, each pulse a reminder of the precarious tightrope she now walked between her past and a nebulous future. This tension grasped her like a marionette coerced into a dance by invisible strings. The table before her still held the vestiges of a careless afternoon, a crumpled napkin, a lone untouched biscotti, and the book there splayed open, mid-thought, like herself. But these simple objects, once anchors, seemed adrift in the turbulent waters of an emerging reality. As she settled the fabric of her dress, her fingers brushed the antique pin, cold and instructive, a relic of resilience, and whispered roads from a grandmother whose stories wove protective spells. To harness courage felt almost theatrical in its absurdity, at a time when laughter could turn bitter on the tongue. Time ebbed away slowly as she watched the street, where shadows now leaked like ink through cobblestone cracks. The once vibrant symphony of Vespa horns and chatter hushed into a throbbing undercurrent of whispers carried by the restless wind. Courage is not only for those who fight, she reminded herself, her voice a quiet declaration for the benefit of the ghost that lingered with her. Yet courage also demanded clarity, and clarity was a fluttering songbird barely alighted on her shoulder. Her father's face surfaced in her mind, etched not in age but in the burden of choices that had unraveled his life and hers by consequence. Once a bastion of law, toppled by the very malignancy he aimed to extinguish. As the night cloaked itself in darker hues and the stars emerged with expectant brilliance, Sophia knew an inescapable truth. Rome held more than memories. It cradled answers amidst its ancient columns. The air shimmered with déjà vu as Sophia gathered her things, an intuition sharper than sight leading her on a path paved by both fate and design. News of her father's possible innocence, circling like vultures over old wounds resurrected, had pressed Sophia into the depth of her craft, painting truth where even eyes were afraid to venture. Just across where Dario once sat, now rested only a shadow. Yet his absence felt purposeful, though he too played part in an orchestrated dance, choreographed not by mere coincidence, but by a shared history naively unaware. Complex calculations began, questions layered upon questions, forming equations too expansive to resolve standing on a street corner. The city too seemed to hold its breath, waiting as she descended from her perch into streets that unfolded like stories interlocked with eternity. Dario had left behind more than an impression. He'd deposited a riddle into her life, cryptic and intoxicating. Beneath the same starlit skies that witnessed emperors and rebels alike, Sophia's steps led her to the Tiber's banks, where secrets flowed like tributaries converging. The river murmured with ancient tongue, imparting solace not entirely soulless, sending ripples that softened stone and shaped the shores. Sophia traced the familiar trail of rusty gondolas and graffiti-scarred walls, threading her way to Gianicolo Hillett's ascent, a dare against destiny. Each upward step punctuated her reflection, where old pathways merged into new convictions, the need to uncover the truth reinforcing her not as a daughter wronged, but as an artist wielding tools capable of divine justice. Those who remained silent when her father's vilification began were now approaching her, whispers trailing in unending procession like an endless play of shadows upon canvas. Atop the hill, enveloped by a breeze sweet with earth and sky's airy embrace, Sophia paused. Beyond, Rome unfurled its brilliance, a tapestry of light and dark stitched with whispered legends. Her gaze was drawn to the stars that obscured yet revealed paths known only to the brave and the foolhardy. When the world shadows you, become the light. The words leapt unexpectedly into her thoughts, her grandmother giving her voice from the past. Sophia breathed deeply, her heart unclenching. It was here, amidst past sins and promises baptized in starlight, that the realization struck. She did not stand alone. The revelation his from Dario came bathed in the city's collective heartbeat, rhythmic and resolute, a revelation, as the faint purr of an engine signaled his presence, rising from secrecy like a phoenix. "Sophia," spoke the knight, his voice weaving seamlessly into dusk's own breath, echoing from shadows that had only moments before vacated Gianicolo's summit. The wind shifted, and she turned, facing the hidden truth poised to shape her narrative anew. In the pause of that heart-stopping moment, Sophia knew her choices mattered. Here, poised between bated breath and swift action, the world waited with her, suspended. And beyond the street lamps that tethered day to night, a silhouette softly called her name. "It's time," it said, as Sophia's heart echoed its resonations into the night. Unseen and yet seen was the message, mouthing, "Are you ready to see what truly exists?" The air crackled fiercely with the kind of electric suspense that tightly wound the nerves. Will you leave before knowing who betrayed you? The words were woven deeply with an inexplicable gravity that made Sophia halt abruptly, her heart seemingly encased in a cold vice. Her thoughts corkscrewed through confusion, the ordinary cacophony of Rome stemming into a reverent silence, creating an arena where she stood alone, beset by the sense of ominous discovery. Sophia De Luca looked every bit a delicate figure in the swirling mystery of night hair's simple linen dress, catching the wind much like a sail grappling against the tide. Yet the softness belied a core of stubborn steel, sharpened by layers of familial conspiracy and unspoken honor that now demanded audience. The weight on her was profound, something ancient and alive. Underestimate was that the word people used to describe her. They saw a restorer, the gentle girl oblivious under her arch scrutiny. But in reality, each brushstroke was prelude to a calculated revelation, teetering over the brink of an abyss she could neither escape nor fully comprehend. Beneath the street's waning lamp, she paced quietly, reveling in the solitude for one shimmering moment. The night's textures pressed against her like a living painting velvet shadows, the tang of rain approaching, cool air sharp with mystery. Then the crisis unveiled itself, insidiously tugged from beneath polite smiles and well-tended routines. Her father's name, muttered with scorn in both high offices and lower courts of Rome's hidden byways, had begun to resurface not just in whispers, but in determined calls. Each step felt heavier than the last, the rare cobblestones of Rome acting like an unsilencing orchestra beneath her feet. From obscurity emerged Anton from the shadows, sharp-suited and brusque. The man had always been a loyal guardian to her family, or so she believed. His message tonight was one of mechanical precision. Determine if the hunter is the savior or simply another predator. Those words, layered with reluctant care, crashed against her heart harder than any confession. They lulled her into an internal fury that brimmed with doubt as much as with resolve. She nodded once, drawing upon the well of fortitude within. Espresso, he offered, abruptly grounding the tension in a brief normalcy. But Sophia shook her head, acknowledging the gesture only in silence. Come with me, she urged instead, a gentle command more confident than she felt. Leading Anton across the Piazza Navona, she absorbed the symphony of life that converged there, the hypnotic fountain music, footsteps dancing around her intentions, and laughter mixing with the river's eternal bend. In the dim light, Anton transformed a device not of espionage but of shared history, eroded by truth and deception alike. Challenges compounded as Dario's absence became palpable, not in the physical space he occupied, but in the way his presence reclaimed streets, alleys, memories, isolating her movements with prying shadows and sudden startles. They ensconced themselves in a small artisan's workshop, one that Sophia trusted, believed its intrigue woven from ancient leather and canvas rituals. Your father spoke of possibilities, not certainties, you know, Anton remarked gently, his eyes like slate firmament shining above turbulent seas. Is every inked name here shaded in blood? Sophia asked, her voice barely a whisper, the kind that echoes as a sorrowful melody woven among the night's stillness. Doubt became an ally, bodies moved by decisions of others and by their own unchecked motivations. Adrenaline crushed rivalries as Sophia uncovered seals and signatures, as opponents became mere names on somebody's ledger, as light twisted across revealed legends portrayed on time-worn canvases. Sophia's eyes glistened with something unformed, a comprehension teetering into light. The paper rustled, conspiratorial whispers aired to be silenced, only for them to chart clearer clarity. Someone in your family fashioned a noose around your father. The revelation hung like weights from history's frame, dislocated in its audacious terror, but firm in undeniable certainty. The heart within Sophia tightened, not from loss, but from the liberty she felt in the possibility of absolution. Suddenly, a quiet, unexpected certainty flooded her, like the first breath after coming up for air. The path cleared rapidly within, the chase reset by choice instead of coercion. Employing his wisdom of years past, Anton assisted her in separating truth from feared imagination, teaching her to draw away shadows, appreciate real perspective. With each explanation, understanding dawned, Not betrayal, but an illuminated understanding of what must pit truth against implacability came into full perspective. Yet, as the expanse of understanding swelled, a singular line echoed her incity, a familiar chorus long since altered. What your heart knows, let your mind pursue. The intonation was steadfast, hauntingly firm. Multiple meanings revealed themselves with a perplexing ripple. In that unrivaled expanse, fascination now fueled Sophia anew. Her perception morphed further, every color neither too pale nor impossibly dark. The allure of uncovering what lie behind motives and crafted respect among criminals cinched her closer to truth. And there she stood, ambiguously alive amidst a shadow of truth and revenge coloring all she faced. It guided how her path cushioned out into this unpredictable twilight. Finally, gently folding the pages away, Sophia turned her gaze, and Dario's next message appeared like a careful etching in vellum. To know beyond what harms you takes courage bestowed by life's silence. As night replanted itself amongst the roots of all uncertain factors, she faced Anton ready for answers or questions unallowable before the stars began to froth above. Eclipsed between worlds tied to fleeting moments, a knowing lamp flickered to grace her senses. Then softly, as the streets lay in contemplation, you could hear the quiet breath of Rome's heartbeat within the shadows' silent applause. In a moment poised, the unseen sought clarity, murmuring to distant winds whose message the night sought clear as morning. Does danger lend itself to beauty? With the words barely brushing the prologue of morning's potential herald, with the ink still unspooled, Sophia knew the city maintained mysteries infinitely intimate. The question dissolved an untold chapter woven into the world's constant tempo, and an answer half-uttered across suppressed histories kept close to a shared world's passageway. Promises and deceptions arrayed like constellations revealed but unseen. You're rather good at hiding in plain sight, aren't you? The voice, rich and dark as aged wine, pricked Sophia's skin with its unexpected accuracy. Swirling autumn leaves whispered voiceless secrets around her as she turned, the night air perfuming her delicate resolve with an edge of cold clarity. Sophia had always been that someone underestimated, much like the quiet brush strokes of restoration, where damage was clear only to those with trained eyes. Her residence nestled on the outskirts of the city was more a haven than a home, walls cloistered with the echo of history she worked tirelessly to preserve. Evening cast shadows long and serpentine across the cobblestones as she gazed out. A tarnished lamp cast fickle light onto the winding path beyond, peppering it with nostalgia, tilted thoughts of her father. Suddenly, a pang of doubt shivered through her resolve, a reminiscence brought by the echo of a pavement-pounded rhythm, an inevitability mated to her father's fingers meeting evening papers, the tremble inadvertent yet ominously clear. The whispers of years past now harmonized with the rusted clangs of a city older than time itself. Her mind unspooled in relentless loops, searching for the pattern within chaos. Each step to undo the threads of a fabricated fate felt as though she waded through conspiracy's molasses, quicksilver reflections, shifting beneath the calm facade she effortlessly wore. The world, despite its chaos, had come to pause at an unspoken moral juncture. The lantern-lit streets seemed abstractions set against Dario's silent, calculating silhouette, a still frame looming despite the absence of familiarity. Pressure descended physically like a thin, damp film across her skin, cunning in its embrace, pointing, as always, to more undefined risks woven into the tapestry of potential betrayal. Her meeting with Anton earlier had merely been a prelude, the orchestration of deception and duty, unfolding in a subtly expanding web stretching across uncountable lives, exchanging dominance for mere embers of affection. Sophia was caught right in that enduring conflict, present integrally yet invisible enough, biding her time veiled in intentional translucency, like ghosts who choose to linger rather than stand as monuments. The city bled secrets through the cracks one could almost hear in the ambient, sliding gusts that formed their own distinct language. Every turn Sophia took resounded with the dull reverberation of history, and perhaps a quiet plea for justice unmarked. Do you think peace dances with those who seek the unarmed truth? The voice reawakened the air persistently. It was not a threat, but rather the melody of understanding, professional, light yet gutturally profound, an arpeggio drawn deliberately from beneath layers of withheld meaning. Her thoughts harbored a fiery deficit she acknowledged, a curiosity fed by more detached ends, wishing perhaps to orchestrate chaos into clarity. Rome's heartbeat surged unfeigned along her route, deserted streets forming witness only to her own bravery. She could almost taste the residue of change along her tongue, sharp with potential and element whose impact thrived. Yet the crescendo was far from its peak, nary a note of life's attribution removed. Her internal tide rose in preparation for a looming wave, awareness sitting keenly on the ridge of produce, now evident through heavy air. In this world, hidden talents do not ossify simply because the canvas lacks observers, the voice murmured again. Sophia's journey was now singular in purpose, revealing truth beneath truths, unmasking every hidden expanse. She played upon time's resonating echo, much like wine aged in cellars, her urine refined rather than obscured. It would be futile to veil uncertainty, not when unadulterated authenticity seems scant. She paused, the hand subconsciously touched again, that resolute pin gleaming warmly against her hair, a heritage woven into femininity fuller than most observed. Her heart remained as sinistral as the shifting light that mirrored Rome's breathy passage, compelling in its directness just as much as in its undercurrents. "What foundation cradles the night?" she whispered, a conversation with the very stones beneath her feet, the fatigue a guardian for those hazardous gaps in understanding. Standing there, a chiseling realization settled in the conspiracy reaching beyond accusations, entangling smiles sun-stripped from naivete. The truth breast's undercurrents, whose vague patterns remain closed, lucid and pained, barely translucent portals to worlds where narratives dip into instability, only barely tethered down. Clarity, she coaxed from the shadows aligning softly behind her avenue of hope, a journey chosen, unforeseen expectations. An envelope, unmarked, yet unremarkable by fate's standards, lay fallen, casually yet purposefully tossed into the blend of luminescent decay, as if placed by wind seeking an audience growing weary. Sophia's fingertips brushed against its waxen build, sealing knowledge sought instinctually. One day you'll see, perception chooses bravery. Then breathless once again, the silent and resolved rhythm returned, half a pin, vulnerable yet teeming with possibility. "You think you know love until you feel its truest form," Dario said softly, his voice echoing in the dimly lit studio as if confessing a secret to the shadows. Sophia blinked twice. The lamp's flicker cast phosphorescent waves across canvases, blending sycamore scents from the courtyard with the cinnamon dust on untouched frames. Her father's presence pulsed faintly in the silence, echoes of laughter, deep conversations now layered with conspiracy's residue. She always felt small here, where paint and permanence mingled, where every ridge of the cobblestones knew every worry, every step she cast searching beyond the allegories of ruin and redemption. Her heart pounded silently, a rhythm kept secret, akin to the fear of an artist's revelation brushed against raw possibility. It gathered her thoughts like a weaver embracing a thread of light amid tapestry's darker tones. In the eddies of Dario's admission, Sophia sensed both challenge and peace, an unpredictable gambit in the world's snaking tale, his voice as steady as the bell chime enveloping the chapel's thin air. Marble dust clung to her fingertips, the husk of history. Her gaze darted to Dario, the notebook spread open like wings barely used yet potent. A rocky horizon where calculated threats met soft-spun intentions, assured his conviction. "Are you afraid someone knows more?" He scanned the room, eyes resting on the gilded edge of frames hung in rue and revelation, the atmosphere thick with their unspoken suspense. "Afraid, no," Sophia nodded slightly, pursing her lips tight as old parchment. "But cautious, yes. Fear breeds watchfulness, often mistaken for cowardice. But it takes true wisdom to recognize it as strength." Threads of unspoken promise wound tautly between them, like a moonlit bridge. His stoicism began to thaw, and cautious warmth replaced ambiguity in the room. A piercing note of desolation settled when he broke the invisible promise of eternal silence with 3 syllables. "You, me, the truth." At his words, she felt everything flicker, just one crucible shift revealing eternity in its brevity. This was what understanding beyond words felt like, awareness unyielding, script rewritten. But the story was not theirs alone to pen. Each path taken had consequences. And as he breathed nearer, desire threading landscapes unforeseen, reality presented its difficult ledger. Beneath this compromise incandescence melded their truths. Inheritance rose like a storm marked across generational precipices, defiant and daring. Their quandary wasn't ordinary, nor was their shelter in naivety. Every choice etched across eternity in forgotten waves whose music only the past could crack as sophistication met rebellion. Yet confidence coursed through her, a thoroughbred bearing life's history, forward moments legacy marked in ink and likeness as walls embraced time's soft burden. She stepped closer, picking up a brush, dipping it fearlessly into colors that knew awareness. Do we paint the future by stepping against the canvas fearless, or do we falter? She mused. He raised one brow, appreciating the quiet authority her question evoked. Not everything crafted sees redemption. It begins with an awakening heart amid the flawed tests of sincerity. Outside, tendrils of mist advanced against the city's quiet pulse, displacing whispers with unformed power. An unprotected sky watched as the moon hung, dreaming distant dreams. A richness filled Sophia's voice, a strength gifted by perpetual memory. Its mean embrace comforting for the lonely and impassioned. Sophia took a breath, tethered to sadness, yet underscored by future assertions. Here, she stood, an artist, a daughter of the flame-tarnished guard, an heir to dreams she only began acknowledging as they pieced themselves amongst night's many stories. Tender outlines of entangled anticipation painted her mind, far from the betrayal she once feared. Apart from theft spoken in pacifism, distant from the blood price paid at luxury's weary margins. The game board had shifted, yet even Dario displayed homage to his own piece on this human tapestry, nothing more than another hue within an aged palette. Part truths engaged themselves behind prying eyes. Dusty alcoves held cryptic riddles, straying farther from innocence when spoken through lowered guards. The world's picture lives, Dario murmured solemnly. Yes, Sophia agreed, feeling both ache and resolve etched deeply, and we should capture it in strokes unwritten by bias, but formed by wisdom. In that moment, a chasm closed as anticipation filled with meaning. Heretofore dormant, answers buried beneath haunted veins poised to combust. Here, eternity whispered promises over boiled ink, as serendipity soon crafted its board with figures painted honest. An echo clung between imagination and understanding, curling through burgeoning comprehension, a kinship realized queuing beneath unfolding burdens. Tomorrow began its narration, blunt in expectation, leaning precariously towards revelation, yet obscurest like constellations unfurled before destiny's appointed hour. The sensation of their shared descent down old-world staircases grappled against star-laned rendezvous where angels wept beneath Bladesky, a lure blended with agony into truth, nurtured resolve. As Sophia released the brush, surrender became definitive, a soothing monologue amid Roma's eternal playback, the reverberations almost sonic in their precise humility. Amidst velvet-lit avenues, something stirred, a noiseless prompting, flanked by tales wafting under whispered train rhythms and clock hands stalled atop an endless tower. In that clandestine hour, worlds parted like mist, and the labyrinth adjusted its knot, impatient yet growing vibrant. Silence's seamless cloak unveiled a parting slip, enough to shift dominion. Rome breathed in shallow breaths, masking layers flaking beneath time's uncompromising judging. Sophia brushed her face, a veil borne above the heart, realigned. Then suddenly, poignant like a lantern lost at sea, a phrase abandoned the dusk, a key turned not too soon for the observer. Are you brave enough to find what's already inside? The crescent hung prophesying space, punctuating the measureless space. Every word unspooled like silver twine, weaving beneath stars dense with potential and heirloom, tangible, secretive, yet encircled by night's ascent. The world felt like a cracked fresco, with reality seeping through the fractures. The moment Dario whispered, "This will change everything," Sophia knew she was standing on the precipice of a profound change. In the afterglow of their shared revelation about love and truth, Sophia found herself even more intrigued by the unraveled story of her father's imprisonment. Each piece of information she uncovered felt like restoring a masterpiece, yet one laced with betrayal and retribution. The evening was thick with the scent of oleanders, caressing the air with a sweetness that belied the bitterness buried beneath the city's cobbled streets. Sophia wrapped herself in the soft cashmere of her cardigan, feeling the weight of 1,000 unsaid words pressing against her chest. Her modest apartment was lit by the low amber light of a single lamp, casting elongated shadows that played tricks on her eyes. Every object within, the hand-painted pottery, the old maps, even the scratches on the wooden floor held memories and whispered secrets of times less complicated. She sat at her desk, tracing the edge of an old photograph with her fingers, worn smooth from years of clutching hope. Her father, Capo Prosecutore Giovanni De Luca, had been a man both feared and respected until the moment when everything shattered. His eyes, captured in grayscale within the photograph, seemed to speak directly to her, urging her toward truths buried deep within layers of deception and half-told tales. She closed her eyes, recalling the hushed conversations and hurried exchanges she'd witnessed as a child. Her father being meticulously methodical, a man who believed in law above all else, made his sudden downfall feel dissonant, like a note on an instrument struck just off key. The pressure of rediscovered truths weighed on her, yet Sophia was not one to cower under scrutiny. A lifetime of being underestimated as just the restorer's daughter had hardened a core of resilience within her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden, sharp rap on the door, a sound almost incongruous with the gentle hum of the city settling for the night. She opened it to find Dario standing there, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a mix of urgency and excitement. "Sophia, I've found something," he said. The words carried a weight of significance, as if he held a strand of fate in his hands. He led her down to a hidden trail just off the Via Quattro Novembre, a narrow passage thick with ivy and memories. The path twisted like a living thing beneath their feet, its journeyward hum closing them into an ambient world of green and shadow. At the heart of this haven, concealed behind brambles and remnants of older architecture, they came upon a decrepit doorway. Dario pushed it open, its rusted hinges groaning in protest, revealing an abandoned workshop. Dust hung in the air, dancing like wisps of thought under the beam of their flashlight. Tools of fine craftsmanship lay dormant on tables, while blueprints, faded but preserved, lined the walls, drawn by hands long gone, but not forgotten. "It was your father's," Dario said, his voice echoing in the silence. Sophia ran her hand along the workbench, feeling the intangibility of legacy beneath her fingertips. Her father had spoken of a place hidden from the eyes of both allies and adversaries, a sanctuary for when the world became too relentless. She could see it now, envisioning him poised over plans and parchments with the dedication of a scholar, pursued by threats unseen. Picking up a ragged piece of paper, her heart skipped as recognition dawned, artistic sketches paired with coded annotations. Evidence of innocence? The workshop was not merely a place of creation, it was a vault of untold truths. Sophia felt a connection so deep it threaded through time, binding her not just to her father's legacy, but to the personal mission for redemption. The revelation continued to soak in as Dario stood a silent guardian, yet determined in his offer of support. She knew now why his presence was always so calculated. It was not merely strategy, but perhaps a deep longing to uncover concealments similar to her own. "Dario, why did you really come here?" Sophia asked, needing clarity in the sea of ambiguity. "Because," he replied, pausing as if choosing his next words from the air itself, "redemption is a path best not walked alone." His honesty lapped at her defenses, stripping away pretenses and laying bare the authentic depth of his involvement. Days woven with anticipation blurred by, as Sophia sank deeper into the rediscovery. Their days and evenings formed a kaleidoscope of dedication. By candlelight, they deciphered what they could, each revelation building upon the last, like bricks set purposefully upon her father's foundation. The sands of time slumped relentlessly forward, moving the story between them past despair into bold, bright territory. Each moment felt etched anew, poignantly capturing the nuanced transitions from the murky to the illuminated. In late hours where tired bodies sought repose, Dario shared stories of his own pains and discoveries, as if in return for the openness Sophia offered by delving into her father's intricacies. The revelation unfolded in layers, as did the glimmer of trust growing between them, fostered in shared confidences and synchronized goals. When sunlight dared peel back their night's cloak, whispers of newfound resolution clung like dew in the fresh morning air, near touchable yet persistently elusive till final grasp. The city hummed gently in the background of their concentrated coupling, a rhythm, in tune with their evolving endeavor as the stakes aligned, and Dario leaned closer to leaving more of him marked in the world beyond spoken word. It was only when all seemed almost serene that anticipation stilled into tranquility, quietly nudging their endeavors forward. Sophia glanced out the remnants of a window, the view framing Rome's soft-spun majesty. Layered in morning haze, she knew transformations awaited beyond perceptions, altered and remade. That note, it's in your father's handwriting, Dario stated, presenting Sophia with a tattered ledger. Emotions poured over her, ensnaring as the longing to untie the labyrinthine voice crying out in every replicated letter. Turning to Dario, her voice a whisper brimming with determination, she spoke. This is our bridge, we walk it true. And just as the thought formed, the morning broke silently but unmistakably across stolen sky, igniting days faded in obscurity. For a heartbeat, Sophia felt suspended between unshed light and cradled night, when a noise, soft yet charged, drew her gaze back into the shadows. The sound was a warning, but the shadows revealed only a new page turning. Written there in ink that challenged the night's retreat were questions waiting to shift the story further than anyone envisaged. What if the hunter was never alone, asked the darkness, once again folding their fate between its elegant fingers, unraveling destiny in a dance unended. In the paralyzing glow of the early morning, with dew casting a transient sheen over the foliage, Sophia found herself surprised by the cold steel of the gun pressed lightly against her spine. Do not move, the voice instructed. A command woven with silken menace, it compelled obedience, not through volume, but through the chilling certainty that resistance would be futile. Sophia De Luca stood humbly in the threshold between expectation and reality, a living silhouette shaped by the tension in the dawn light. Her breath mingled imperceptibly with the crisp air, invisible vapors whispering secrets carried by her pulse. She wore her regular attire, a simple dress of deep blue that seemed to drink in the shadows. Her fingers involuntarily brushed against the antique pin that nestled comfortably within her hair, a beacon of her lineage among the unfolding mystery. Sophia's mind worked quickly, thoughts dancing on the razor-thin edge of panic and clarity. The pressure against her back was a pointed reminder of the volatility that infused her world. An urgency compounded by the wrestling gears of understanding suddenly set into tumult. What is it you want? She asked, her voice level, despite the adrenaline-fueled cadence beneath her composed surface. Answers, came the response, clipped, inefficient. A scar on the voice of the interrogator, not merely a vendetta personal, but echoing the entangled threads of countless unspoken alliances. In her father's abandoned workshop, an echo chamber of past whispers, the daylight hesitated to encroach fully, leaving shadows longer and darker. The morning sun, just cresting over the slumbering city, stained the skyline with the promise of revelations yet undertaken. Dario, who had momentarily stepped outside to think, now joined them, his composure undisturbed except for the faintest flicker of tension in his jaw. The scene itself felt carefully orchestrated, elements of suspense mingling with the ordinary in their quiet perfection. Outside, birds stirred cautiously, their melodies muted scales against the unseen opera building in tension within these walls. Sophia, you must remember, not all truths are yours to carry. Dario spoke with a steadiness that reassured her, even as the mystery deepened between them. There was an observable moment where the world seemed to realign, focusing sharply on the tilt of Dario's head, the way the gunman's grip shifted slightly, and the soft rustle of paper falling from Sophia's pocket. The slip of parchment held cryptic scrawls, details prone to erode under the prying light, but which now begged interpretation, hovering as an unresolved reprieve in the charged air. These are your father's, Dario whispered, stepping forward with an unprecedented softness. Understanding bridged between villain and artist in the dim glimmer of hope. The gunman's grip lessened, confusion mingling with expectation in the silent confrontation. Violence is not the answer, Sophia spoke again, her calm unwavering as she held the gunman's gaze, a mirror reflecting not hatred, but a contemplation of shared humanity. For a moment, labels dissolved into the crackling silence, quizzical threats transformed by the reciprocity of unknown past and futures. Sophia's revelation struck like sunrise met reclaimed land, her hidden strength unfurled in the careful alignment of knowledge over aggression, each reconnaissance a step towards a horizon unrevealed but sought. The gunman hesitated, a soldier of fortune caught between loyalty's fading grasp and the purity of a palpable truth roofed in compassion. Dario, witnessing the transformation, was charged with a realization, a thread pulled tightly at the fabric of his purpose, lending clarity to his aligned intentions. "I will leave you these," the gunman finally murmured, a glove concealing scarred knuckles folding the paper into Sophia's hand before retreating into the obscure recesses beyond. With resolve, Sophia and Dario faced the surrendering light of the new day, their paths now entwined more resolutely within the shadows of Rome's heart, where history played stories uncolored by judgment. Streams of clarity cradled Sophia's conscience anew, acceptance coiling gently within her, understanding of inherited consequence. Upon this precipice of the unforeseen, Sophia whispered to the undulating dawn, "What justice there is will be driven not by fear, but by the courage to understand." They lingered quietly in the workshop, silence more profound for its shared determination. But this was only the beginning. The threads of revealed fortune tugged in an unfinished symphony, where frayed notes beckoned resolve and fire mingled with the promise of returning light. The evening quiet awaited Sophia and Dario beyond the threshold, their footsteps a measured metronome against cobblestones etched by centuries. "What was to be your father's last act?" questioned Dario, as if unearthing the heart of an unopened dialogue. "I guess we begin to find out," Sophia replied, her words carving possibility into the anticipation-rimmed air. As the sun slowly kissed Rome's horizon, shadows drew taut across the silent street. A figure briefly glanced back at them from afar before melting into the morrow. "What is the world watching for?" Sophia pondered quietly as the veil of suspense began unfolding anew. An impossibly low rumble shook works of art long forgotten, as if angered spirits were rising up to be heard. "You don't understand," the voice hissed, urgent yet cloaked in desperation. "You have no idea what's at stake because of your father's return." Sophia stood amid the cluttered remnants of her father's secret workshop, eyes sharp with determination, resonating like blades just unsheathed. Her hair, wild from the morning breeze, framed a resolute face marked not by age, but by battles waged under public scrutiny and her own private wars. The basement held memories etched with pain and resolve, the earthy scent of graphite and age intruding upon the rare sunshine streaming through a grated window. It illuminated glimpses of Sophia's intent, the faded crime board, photographs pinned like echoes from the past, and a single mutant plant flourishing from neglect, vibrant amidst decay. Since her father's disappearance, Sophia had inherited an unseen legacy wrapped within the shadows of his unfinished work. A restorer by trade, her life was a patient exercise in piecing together the past, now manifesting as an intricate tapestry of fear and familial loyalty, effortlessly intertwined. Yet betrayal felt like a visceral presence. As tendrils of truth wove around her, credibility battled skepticism as faithfully as her own heart beat against her rebelling chest. Now each night blended seamlessly into early morning revelations. The air oozed with unpredictability, tension thickening like a fine mist pressing against the threshold they hesitated at. Dario's steady breath was the only counterpoint to the clicking of their steps navigating ancient stone that never fully shrugged off daybreak's warmth. "What was it that drew you here, Sophia? Your family's reckoning or something deeper, measure you can't yet articulate?" Dario's question lingered in the air. Here was the contract she did not remember signing, entangling her heritage with disclosure. She stood resilient as always, amidst relics of friction between past and present. She shook her head gently and said, "Dario, if legacy is defined by the ghosts we own, then I'm just beginning to recognize mine. We can't walk away without knowing everything. The ceiling high above rumbled again, anticipatory thunder linked to unearthing secrets better left forged in silence. Hesitancy flavored the slant of Dario's smile. Reluctance underpinned by acknowledgement of fragility scored deeper by reality's festering wound. Within this impromptu alliance, Sophia sensed unspoken stories lying in dormant corridors. They mirrored her own, fractured by intent, binding lengths of contradictions, measuring uncertain endeavors. Information once buried unspooled with merciless precision. A dossier, unearthed from beneath loose boards, painted a portrait of dealings far beyond imaginative reach. Innocence danced beside destruction, timelines and names warped inside a photograph's ruthless grasp. "Does it trouble you that the lines between right and wrong blur here?" Dario asked gently. Sophia leaned against a counter littered with evidence of a past complex and obscure, secrets clinging cryptically to the dust. "It's in this blurring we live, isn't it, Dario?" Her words held weight despite withering volumes present around them. Yet the clarity they craved demanded not just knowledge but understanding. The truth was unsettling, perpetually reshaping itself, shape evoking conspiracy that would make shadows shiver. A worn laptop blinked into existence, its contents reflecting Sophia's racing mind. Desolate files filled with encoded words jumped out, each letter cut from the same deceit-ridden cloth. Dario moved closer, a silent echo protector, bound by tension. He placed a gentle hand over hers, steadying her thoughts running wild with consequence. Just as their fingers touched, as if in response, a crosshatch of cold realization seeped across their understanding, merely touching them with wary wisdom. "What if your father was working against the very forces who intended his imprisonment?" Dario finally asked, his voice edged in a cautious blend of discovery and awe. Within Sophia, lightning struck chords, tangling them into worlds uncharted and perilous. She turned the thought over, filling the newly exposed cavity with possibilities unchecked. As they contemplated, the room's contours compressed like hearts, squeezing breaths, holding destinies thick with expectancy. Sophia whispered, as if afraid to disturb the truth, "If it's true, we need to know who his enemies really are, and why." With Dario as her anchor, their alliance shielded by inherited hope, they awoke potential stirred by unforeseen clarity, unraveling myths with knife-blade patience. Outside, the morning world continued its practice of indifference, a city uncoiled by ripples where histories conflicted, and future's mealtime enigmas were spectacularly unresolved. They were shadowed by narratives born of caustic interactions, yet despite betrayal, Sophia felt the jagged strength embracing her, lifting the entirety of her family's burden. Each betrayal lending her inexhaustible mysteries. And this burden was reformed, not a cloak of despair, but an adventure, driving them forward along an unmoored time frame, sparking spheres of unimaginable depths and clarities waiting beyond. "In discovering our lost truths," she murmured, before stepping toward destiny's door, "we don't shun the shadows. We become something that can't easily be disarmed." Together they shifted position to see the sun startle awake from beyond silent walls, symbol of victory whispering across tales half-told. Shadows held whispers of old negotiations and new alliances punctuated by sprawling reality, stirring afar before vanishing into obscurity. Sophia absorbed the humble might of their partnership, worlds assured in their embrace as morning paled, her decisions less obscure despite their daunting scope. Just as they turned, laughter, unburdened and childlike, broke the tension of the city. The relief created melody from a distant street. And there, balanced between night's retreat and day's complete aspiration, Sophia granted her road not darkness's victim, but truth's tenacious herald. As the sun finally breached and poured across the nominated threshold, an echo burst through the stillness. Voice soft and imbued with curiosity, "What if the stars know things because we are just now ready to see them?" The shattered glass crunched beneath Sophia's hesitant steps like whispers amplified across the night. "It's poetic," Dario murmured beside her, his voice wreathed with an edge of mirth they had not earned. Sophia blinked against the darkness, her world sharp yet saturated. where chiaroscuro outlines painted every danger she had once imagined, now alarmingly close, reality suffused by the ghosts of what could have been. Her father's secret workshop loomed behind them, abandoned in the wake of discovery, now only a kernel of possibilities undone, leading them deeper into Romea City, whose veins pulsed with story and myth, comfort and conspiracy, wicked remembrance. Sofia de Luca, nourished upon her ancestral legacy of resilience and decorated with betrayals shielded by dark eyes, progressed forward through the city's intricate labyrinth, where cobblestones murmured legends and the very air caressed with damp tendrils of history biding time. The city's pulse beat in her blood now, harmonizing her quickening heart, ushering fears and longings into new compositions just sensed before. It felt akin to surrendering oneself to the dance, the possibilities scribed in movement, destinies intersecting her breath. Pressure coalesced around them from shadowed corners and the ubiquitous flicker of street lamps, illuminating Dario's features in stark relief. A partner, an enigmatic catalyst, whose purpose entwined with hers only after the strings of mystery began to untangle. Yet Rome itself, a long, living breath drawn within old stones and tapestries, both sacred and mundane, watched as a silent arbiter. Its presence constant, demanding witness to transformations unseen yet perpetually churning. Every step is a gamble, Dario's voice twisted among the threads of time, insinuating poetry alongside his troubled amusement. Likewise, Sophia reflected without a word, for silence bore testament to the unsaid agreements, undercurrents braided into the worn cobbles over which they trod. Amidst chaos crouched poised potential, finding its perch with an inherent patience born of layers of intrigue, secrets worn well beneath velvet instinct, the kind not easily frayed. With bare hands, Sophia methodically picked through her father's prophecy-laden documents, recordings not as tangible silk, but as living cells scoozing, which grappling truth to embrace or set aside. In undertone, her mission gleaned light and shadow while etching paths through the softened lines dividing perception and recollection, relinquishing certainty like a surreal twilight. As the night sifted like so much sand through their fingers, around them fell the murmuring whispers of a conspirator's gallery, unraveled to reveal scrawled notes among jigsawed personalities and promises neither clearly broken nor faithfully kept. Her persistence demanded recognition. It flared warmly within the city's interconnected aura, harmonizing the long thread of distances abated by trust partially healed. A consequential urgency hung unresolved as their trajectory joined ally with adversary beneath Rome's stars. Observations less hasty than their promise dissuaded but reinforced freedom, drawn in no longer hidden gestures. Now with newfound understanding, she turned to Dario, whose silent resolve matched hers, recognizing themselves in the unfolding map journey of the heart none foresaw. Dario's gaze softened a moment of clarity in the moonlit web of night. And if danger's gift lies in recognizing beauty, he queried quietly, casting the city's contours beneath rich moonbeams as artistry's quixotic hand. Even in the perception mired by chance, Sophia grasped the delicate, fragile strings that bound them to fate. There's power in what exists unseen, she acknowledged, her eyes tracing the hidden constellations of stars marking revolutions before. Together they plunged into Rome's depths, the pavements anointed by sudden droplets of rain, tracing paths, clear resonances woven into the night's tapestry, simple yet dazzling. The journey mused upon betrayal paints past alongside tomorrow's discovery, whispering legacy dressed in fine layers of family sewn into Rome's heart, guarded by cryptic histories long altered. Sophia's voice required no eloquence. An echo reinforced softly upon the liquid march of time, darkness fraught with comprehension ever blossoming, fears unfurled where realities merged into united awareness, despite shadows promising beseeching choices irreversible. Between them lay a changed world, turning just on the cusp of promises, all mysteries gripped by those able to sustain the flame. Quiet contemplation tethered them, its cadence engaging. Night hummed lullabies strung with pointed anticipation even as resonance filed into knowing ingrained across lingering notes. There in a moment spare yet full, time graced converging angles soundly traversed, illusions undulating serenade across whispered epics. Finally, from among their findings, a solitary artifact emerged, a letter from her father, concealed and preserved amidst tumult. It carried his yearning words, imbued with accounts unnamed. There's wisdom in hiding, strength when truth bears light. You were not alone, they concluded in unison, softening the night with their knowing. A liberation coiled patiently, revealed as inevitable revelation threaded by curation of ancestral anatomy. Equal parts wrested possibility and culmination. They lingered as Rome slept vigilantly under wings spun by moonlit, candorous symphonies, woven purposefully to guide the stories of all. With the faintest ripple of motion ahead, a panoramic vision coalesced, enamored by a rhythm sung just outside understanding's frame. All that had lingered absently unburied, eloquence shaped sorrow's matrix, shadows kissed by destiny. Finding no stranger among undiscovered worlds, Sophia invited the dawn to usher their stories close, her resolve etched anew upon their entwined arc. Amid the parting symphony, one question reverberated softly as the stars caught their breath. Will you dream anew beneath the moon's sanctuary?